In this video, we're going to look at the next two presidents, Adams and Jefferson, and some of the domestic and foreign policy issues that they faced during their administrations. So, Adams' presidency was most notable for its disputes between the members of his cabinet. He's going to retain all of the people that Washington had chosen, and particularly they're going to disagree on this idea of foreign policy. So both France and Great Britain claimed the right to seize American ships, and Adams finds that the U.S. is going to have to defend itself against the aggressions from these two countries that are at war with each other. And so the Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, feels that the U.S. should side with France, and we know that the Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, wants the country to side with Britain. And so you have those two political parties, those two factions that have formed, and they believe polar opposite things. However, Adams wants to remain neutral. So he kind of takes the policy of Washington that we're not going to side with either country, we're going to be neutral. This leads to a lot of controversy with Hamilton and a deep rift in the Federalist Party. So Adams is going to send a delegation to France to negotiate a treaty that would hopefully avoid war. The French ministers, however, are going to demand huge bribes as a condition for negotiation. So in other words, like if you want us to talk to you, pay us this bribe, and then we'll sit down and negotiate with you. So when the United States refuses to pay these bribes, the treaty obviously is going to fall through. Official reports referred to the ministers that offer this bribe as X, Y, and Z, rather than their actual names, and this failed treaty attempt becomes known as the XYZ affair. The American people are going to react angrily and a lot of resentment to the French as a result of this, and it's going to be an embarrassment for Jefferson and the other pro-French Democratic Republicans. So the country begins to prepare for war with France, including building warships. Although neither nation is going to officially declare war, the two are going to fight a number of battles at sea beginning in 1798 in what will become known as the Quasi-War. Okay, not actual war, but some battles that do occur. In the meantime, as this quasi-war with France continues, the Federalists are going to feel their position threatened by Republican criticism and dissent to their opinions. And so with Adams' support, the Federalists in Congress passed 4 laws that are collectively known as the Alien and Sedition Acts. So the first was the Naturalization Act, which required immigrants to wait 14 years to become U.S. citizens instead of the original 5 years. And since immigrants tended to vote for the Democratic Republican Party, this prevented the Democratic Republicans from getting as many votes as they thought really would have went towards them. The Alien Friends and Alien Enemies Act. The Alien Friends Act gives the federal government the authority to deport immigrants that it deems dangerous to the peace and safety of the United States, even during times of peace. And the Alien Enemies Act allowed for the deportation of immigrants from countries with which the U.S. was at war, even if those immigrants didn't pose individual threats. Okay? So it allows us to get rid of people that we don't want in our country that were immigrants. And the last, the Sedition Act, criminalized the writing or publication of false, scandalous, or malicious writing against the federal government, with penalties including fines and being sent to prison. So as a result, the editors of several Democratic Republican newspapers are arrested, including Benjamin Franklin's grandson. This arrest in particular sparks a public outcry against all 4 of these acts. Okay. In response to the Alien and Sedition Acts, you can guess who's probably going to have a response when his political party is being attacked, or what he sees as an attack: Thomas Jefferson. He's going to pair with James Madison, and they're going to draft the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions. These documents are going to say that these 2 states oppose these acts, and they're going to make a case that states have the right to oppose decisions of the federal government. This is going to be a theme that we're going to see kind of resonate throughout history. You'll see it come again during Jefferson's term in office, during Jackson's term in office, and we really see it come to a head as we move towards the Civil War. Okay, this idea of states' rights. In these resolutions, Jefferson and Madison declared that the Constitution is a compact or an agreement between states rather than a mandate for a strong central government. Northern states, and particularly New Hampshire, strongly disagreed with these resolutions, and they support the federal government stance. So you have this idea that states should have more power than the federal government, and that the opposing idea that the federal government should have the authority to dictate what the states should do. So the strong public outcry against the Alien Sedition Acts helps Jefferson's election bid in 1800, and he's going to become president. And when he does, Jefferson pardons everyone who had been convicted of crimes under the Alien and Sedition Acts. The Alien Friends and Sedition Act expire in 1800 and 1801, and the other two acts are going to either be repealed or amended. So they get away from these Alien Sedition Acts. That leads us to the election of 1800. So the presidential campaign is going to pit John Adams against Thomas Jefferson. And we know from the video clips that we've seen that these two guys were friends. Charles C. Pinckney is going to run as a Federalist. Aaron Burr is a Democratic Republican. And despite the possibility that either Pinckney or Burr could win the largest number of votes, most people assume that either Adams or Jefferson are going to win the election, even though there's 4 candidates. The public response to the Alien Sedition Acts had already diminished Adams' popularity, so divisions within the Federalist Party are also going to hinder him. And we know that Adams wasn't the most popular guy. He was kind of again, seen as this socially awkward kind of guy, even though he's incredibly intelligent. Doesn't have the personality to back it up. Hamilton led a faction of Federalists who see Adams as too moderate, and they're going to seek stronger federal powers. Adams finds himself squeezed between his own party on one side and the Democratic Republican Party on the other side. So during the campaign, the Federalists accused Democratic Republicans of being murderous, atheists, pro-French radicals who would destroy the country. And the Democratic Republicans called Federalists pro-British aristocrats who would undermine Republican values and oppress the American people. It's going to be a bitter election, to say the least. And so the election itself demonstrates the problems inherent in the Constitution. And since the Democratic Republicans won more electoral votes than the Federalists, everyone assumes Jefferson would become president. However, each member of the Electoral College chose to cast one vote for Jefferson and one for Burr. And so this results in a tie. So consequently, the Federalist-controlled House had to decide the election's outcome. Most Federalists are going to prefer Burr, but Hamilton, who despised both men but distrusted Burr more, uses his influence to gain support for Jefferson, who won the House vote. So Jefferson becomes president in a kind of contested election in 1800. So we're going to read an article about the election of Jefferson into this presidency. And interestingly enough, or ironically, we know that Hamilton helps propel Jefferson, who he doesn't like, but he dislikes Aaron Burr even more, into the presidency. And then in 1804, when Hamilton and Burr have a duel, that Hamilton will die as a result of that. So the election in 1800 leads to the passage of the 12th Amendment. The 12th Amendment requires members of the Electoral College to cast one vote for president and another for vice president rather than 2 votes for president. We're going to end this discussion right here. We'll pick it back up next week talking about some things that Jefferson accomplishes during his presidency.